Welcome to Tony Martignetti Nonprofit Radio coverage of the 2016 Nonprofit Technology Conference. The hashtag is 16NTC. We are in the Convention Center in San Jose, California. With me now are Heather Martin and Karen Graham. Heather is seated closest to me, and she is the Chief Operating Officer at Interfaith Family. Karen Graham is Executive Director at Idealware. Ladies, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you both.
Pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you. Your topic for the session is virtual organizations managing remote employees in the leadership track. All right. We need to be a little more open, I guess, to virtual employment opportunities. Is that right? Yes, Heather?
Yes, we're finding that there's more talent out there that you might not be able to tap into if it's only in your local community. And just there's some...
You can open yourself up to the whole world.
You can.
Potentially, or at least the whole country if you're willing to do that, right? Yeah.
And however, it's not an easy thing to do necessarily. And so we're hoping to give some tips and techniques for people who are managing virtual employees or who are virtual employees themselves.
Yeah. Karen, so you think it's a combination, we're not doing it as much as we could, and those who are not doing it maybe are not doing it as well as they could?
Right. I think some organizations are held back by fears of like some of the myths about remote employees. You know, I won't be able to know what this person is doing. They're going to be folding laundry and eating cupcakes all day, things like that. And that, okay, it's not always untrue, but almost always. But, you know, most people are pretty conscientious and very productive at home. And in fact, I think I'm probably more productive when I work from home or away from a group of people than I am when I'm in the middle of all those interruptions.
Okay, and Heather, are you virtual also?
I am not virtual, but I
Okay.
manage virtual employees in 8 different cities.
Oh, excellent. So we have a manager of 8 different city employees and someone who works virtually. Karen,
Right.
You're virtual. Okay.
And my entire team is virtual.
Okay. All right. Is the whole company? I mean,
Yes.
Idealware. All right. All right.
And that's a recent change for us. So whereas Heather has a great deal of experience with this, it's really new for me. And so for the last year, I've been learning what it's like to convert from almost everybody in a brick and mortar office to having everyone work from home offices.
And so I'm really curious what brought about that change.
It started with one person who was remote, and then as new staff were hired, we just looked for the best talent wherever we could find it and didn't worry as much about having everybody in one central location. And so just gradually we've evolved into having people in 3 different time zones and being spread across the country.
Okay, cool. Heather, it sounds like we need to first get over our own objections to, no, it's got to be a local employee. I don't want to take this on somebody remote.
One of the things that we're finding is the old culture within some organizations is if I don't see it happening, it's not happening.
Yeah.
And that's embedded in a lot of older organizations. And once we get over that and we put in some processes to handle that, people get more and more comfortable. One of the things we're finding, and Karen alluded to this also, is if you hire the right people, then that idea that if I don't see it, it's not happening, and trusting your employees is really key in managing virtual organizations.
Okay. Where do we, since you're the manager of 8 different locations, people in 8 different cities, where do we start with this? Should we start with the hiring process? Do we...
So I think what's very important is identifying before you even hire someone, what are the skill sets that this person needs? What are their goals going to be? What is their job going to be? There are definitely some roles that cannot be done virtually.
Okay, very good.
So it's not for everyone, it's not for every organization, it's not for every position.
Okay, so identifying where it belongs. Okay. Karen, anything you want to add at that stage? Not yet. Okay. Let's get started with some tips. I mean, okay, we've identified what types of people we need, what kinds of skills we need. Well, actually, I'm taking a step back. What are some types of jobs, Heather, that definitely should not be virtual, you think?
I think that if you're a type of person that needs to, if your role needs to be interacting with people on a regular basis to get something done within an office, so an office manager, things that need to have interactions with other people on a regular basis. And I don't know if you come up, if I'm looking at Karen, if you came across any of this as you all went virtual, but I'm finding that it's been very difficult to have a virtual employee if their job is to sit down with you and communicate with you on a regular basis and get stuff done in a physical environment.
Okay. Karen, you...
I would agree with that. And that's a challenge that technology can partially solve, but it can be really challenging.
Okay. All right. Let's move it to technology. We'll get to tips, and we have plenty of time together. What are some of the tools that you find just essential for this?
Sure, and here
Yeah,
we are at
go
a
ahead.
technology conference,
Right.
so it makes sense to really focus on that. One of the tools that we use most often at Idealware to keep in touch and to sort of simulate the water cooler conversations
Yeah.
that tend to get lost with a virtual team is chat. And so we use Google Apps for our email and calendars and document management and everything. And so it felt natural for us to just use Google's chat tools as well. And we have a channel set up called the Virtual Break Room. And there's usually a little bit of activity on there every single day. And people will just post like, oh, it just started snowing outside, or my cat is sick, or just kind of that casual conversation that's not really work related, and yet it's so crucial to building a cohesive team.
Yeah.
And feeling like you really are part of each other's full lives.
How cool is that? Because you have to try to simulate what being in the office is like. So you mentioned the water cooler. You're trying to virtually simulate that so that it feels like an office space. Heather, does that make sense? Am I like going backwards?
No, you kind of have to go backwards in order to make this effective.
Okay.
Communication is key. What all of the tips, all of the technology, everything you use, it goes back to the ability to create cohesive communication between people who are not physically in the same space. So the same way Karen has her virtual water cooler, we use Skype for business on a regular basis. And if you want to talk to someone, you're usually on Skype. You click on it, you have a video, and you have a quick conversation, something that may not necessarily be as effective if you try to do it through email. And it's probably faster. And email has been detrimental sometimes to our employees because they're just getting hundreds and hundreds of these. And if you want a quick answer, there's all these other tools, like these chat tools, that make it a little easier.
Okay. How about, Karen, please.
Our process at Idealware for kind of identifying what technologies we needed to help us as a virtual team really started by looking at what gaps were there that were left by not being in the same place together. So one of the things that you miss is a lot of nonverbal cues to what people are thinking, how they're reacting to something. And so we use video a lot as well, and that's always our default.
What video platform? What do you use?
We use Google Hangouts primarily, but we also have some other, like Skype and other tools that we use for external meetings as well.
Okay.
And so with Heather, we actually just met for the first time about 5 minutes ago.
Really?
In person.
Yes,
Oh.
but
Oh,
we've been
okay.
on
Yeah.
been on video chats together several times before, and I feel like we kind of know each other. I knew what she looked like. My coworkers know when I get a haircut, when I get a new outfit, even though it might be 4 or 5 months between seeing each other in person.
Are you using video every day?
Yes. I probably spend on average 2 to 3 hours a day on video chat.
Yeah. Heather, is that common too? A lot of video?
Depending on the positions and who's working with who, yes. We actually have a staff meeting through WebEx where all 28 employees get on to video chat, depending on who's available and who's not in their pajamas. Sometimes people bow out because they don't want to be put on video. But it's really helpful to see people and to connect with them at a visual level, even if they're not physically in the same space.
Yeah. We're humans. I mean, we want, we respond to community and I think visual cues as well. I mean, it helps a lot to be seeing people.
People have a tendency, one of my first experiences with this virtualness was I was working at IBM and I was doing strategy consulting, I was project managing the implementation of Lotus Notes. And we needed the tech team to do work in order to get the implementation done. The tech team was in Armonk, New York. I was living in Virginia, and we were implementing this to staff nationwide. And what you would do is each project manager had to get in touch with the tech team, get them to do stuff. Something broke, you had to go back to them. And what we found was I happened to go to Armonk for a training, and I went into the room where the tech team was sitting and introduced myself. After that, everything seemed slightly easier. And it was just because when I picked up the phone and I asked them to do something, I knew who I was talking to and they knew who I was. And just having that physical connection made things so much smoother.
Okay. You said it a lot more eloquently than I did. Thank you. Thank you for helping me recover. Let identify other tools. I mean, it's got to be Google Docs, Google Calendar, or something else. What are you using, Karen?
Collaborative document systems are very helpful for virtual teams. And at Idealware, maybe not surprisingly, since we're a research and knowledge organization, we have mostly introverts on our staff. And I've actually found that when we do brainstorming, sometimes it can be more productive when we do it virtually by typing notes and ideas into a shared Google Doc than when we actually do it in person.
Yes.
It helps those introverts kind of get their say without feeling like they have to jump into the fray of a really lively conversation, and gives them space to think a little bit when they need to and then participate when they're ready.
Cool.
So that's an interesting benefit of working in this manner.
Yeah. Heather, you see anything like that?
I do. I also think that not only the technology tools are important, but laying the groundwork with expectations is key to making sure that everyone's on the same page.
Now, are we back at the hiring?
Not on the hiring,
stage?
but how you're actually running it. So with Karen, if you're having a conversation, they do it through video conference. For us, we've set out some, and I know you also have communication charters to make sure that when people are connecting with each other, they know how to connect with each other.
Communication charter. What is this?
So for us,
we have jargon jail on.
Yes, we do.
Radio,
we do. Basically, what we do is when we hire someone new, when they first come on, they get oriented. One of the things we ask them to do is to talk to us about how they like to be communicated with. And sometimes they can't answer that question up front. But for us, it's really important to understand if you don't like email, or there's people, especially we hear this from various employees, they hate the phone. They don't want to pick up the phone. They don't want to talk to someone. The phone rings and they actually shake. They don't want to. But if you were to text them or chat with them online, they'd be more than happy to respond to you. And so understanding how people interact with their communication makes it so much easier because you don't have those visual cues. You can't see if you're walking into someone's office and they're super busy or super stressed or someone's sitting there. And so we like to set it out ahead of time to let people know what works for them.
And similarly, we have 11 golden rules for working as a virtual team, and they
communication
mostly
charter or the golden rules, whatever we're going to call them. Okay.
They mostly address communication. Our number one rule is assume positive intent, which can be hard when you don't know that somebody didn't sleep last night because they were up with their baby, or you miss some of that stuff that you might find out at the water cooler. So assume positive intent is the number one rule. But then we've also talked about, for example, with video chat, it can feel very intrusive to just have that turned on all of a sudden, like someone is calling you and without warning. So we have a practice of doing kind of a virtual knock on the door through chat. And if I want to talk to Dan, I'll send him a chat and say, are you free right now? Is this a good time? And then we start the video conference. So there's just a lot of etiquette and respecting each other's time. Another thing we do is with email, if there's an urgent reply needed, then we'll put that right in the subject line because we get such a huge volume of email that helps us to scan and know how to be responsive to each other when it's really needed.
Okay, and we have to avoid abusing the urgent tag too, right?
Right.
Okay. Share another golden rule. I like the 11 golden rules.
I wish I had them memorized, but I don't.
One other, you got one. Well, okay, you start with positive intent. That's a great one.
Right. Another one we talked about was email length, and at what point when you're writing a 4-screen email, does that mean it's time to pick up the phone or do a hangout?
Okay.
So that's another one. We have some guidelines about that.
Okay. Excuse me one sec. Hey, Hannah, maybe we could give postcards out to the folks in line there, or a little engagement perhaps? Cool. All right, thank you. Thank you. So, got to keep the show. We got to keep the show alive.
Yeah.
Around 10,200 listeners. All right. Let's see. So some other tips about doing this successfully. Go ahead, Heather.
Email's a big one for us also. my rule is if I'm on the third email on the same topic, I'm picking up the phone. The minute that you have to go back and forth at least 3 times,
It's too much.
it's too much.
Right.
And
Right.
it's so interesting. I was at a session this morning, and I just heard the best line about email. Email should be 5 lines. It should tell me who you are, what you want me to do, when you want me to do it by, why I need to do it for you. And there was one more that I don't remember. But if it's longer than that, you're going to lose people's attention. It's going to go into a file, and people may never get to it. If you really need something urgently, whether you flag it or pick up the phone. Like the phone is there, or create a chat and do it immediately. Like, don't put it out there into the ethernet and then hope that someone's going to respond to it in the way that you would expect them to.
Does it take time to get comfortable with this?
Absolutely.
If a person is not accustomed to being a virtual employee, it does, right?
Very much so. And I also think that setting the expectations up front and letting people know that this is not an easy thing is very helpful, because some people feel really lost out there. And what we try and do is when a new employee comes on, or someone starts to work virtually who wasn't working virtually before, let them know that this might be difficult. There's going to be a learning curve, and we're here to work with you on it. You're not just out there by yourself, and you have to do it without any support.
Karen, have there been people who decided not to work for Idealware because it was 100% virtual? Has that ever been an issue? Or?
No, we haven't encountered that. We did have, I'm thinking of one staff member in particular who is very social and enjoys that aspect of working in an office. And so when he became a home-based employee, that it was an adjustment. For him, perhaps more than some of the rest of us who aren't quite as social and interactive. And it took a little bit of patience and adjustment on his part, I think. For all of us, it also was very important for us to have our own local networks and people that we could interact with. And so many of us will occasionally work from a coffee shop, or I have a group of local friends and colleagues who also work from home for various ventures. And so one thing we did was, because none of us get to have a holiday party with our coworkers, we had one with each other. And I hosted it at my house, and we had maybe 6 or 7 people there who all work independently from home. And so that was a really fun thing to do, to kind of substitute for the social aspects of working with your own team at an office every day.
Is there an annual or semi-annual gathering of all the, would you say it was 15 employees of Idealware? Was it, did I have the number right? Was it 15?
No, we have 5.
Oh, 5. Oh.
Yes, we're a fairly small team.
Do you get together physically at least once a year or something?
We do. We don't have a set
necessary.
routine, but yes, at least once a year we'll all get together.
Okay.
And in the past year, we have gotten together a little bit more often too, because of, well, various reasons I don't need to go into here.
Okay.
But there are times when there's a big change in the organization, there's a big project that you're working on that just require you to be together more often.
Okay. Heather, how about you? Do you have to bring these people from 8 cities together?
We do.
Physically?
We do. And it was a really interesting learning for us when we first started to expand into these other cities. At first, we didn't bring anyone in to meet the internal staff in our Boston headquarters. Now, anytime a new employee starts at whatever level, if they're virtual, they come and do a couple of days training in Boston with us, just to meet everybody, see what the national office looks like. And annually, we have a staff retreat in Boston where we bring everybody in for 2 days to get together and to brainstorm and talk and just get to know each other.
Okay. That's interesting. The onboarding process has to be face-to-face.
I think that you can't get away from what you get, the value you get of meeting someone in person.
Yeah.
And if you can, and if it's available financially, resource-wise, time-wise, even if you can get together once a year or even at the beginning so people can meet each other in person, it's invaluable.
Right. Now, Karen, with being 100% virtual, does a new employee, would they get to meet someone face-to-face physically?
We have not made a hire since we became 100% virtual, so
Okay.
I'm not sure what our plans will be for that.
Right.
But
Okay.
a related issue that nonprofits should think through if they're considering going to a virtual team is offboarding, or when employees exit, how do you handle that? And we're dealing with that right now. We have an employee who is going to be leaving Idealware. And so we're thinking about, well, okay, how do we collect the stuff that is in storage at her house the equipment that is Idealware's equipment that she has in her possession right now. How do we have a farewell party for somebody and really make that a meaningful event when we can't physically be together? Those are all, they require creativity and thoughtfulness, and I'm sure we won't do them perfectly, but that's something we're learning.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, the offboarding. Right. All right. Listen, we still have a couple more minutes together. Well, part of your session was going to be 10 key steps. Have we covered any of the 10 key steps?
I think we've covered most of them in a variety of different ways.
That's fine. Good.
I'm trying to think. The other thing that we do, just one other tip while we're at it, is I've spoken to other organizations who have virtual Friday drink beers get-togethers. And Friday afternoon, everyone gets on video, gets their glass of tea, glass of wine, glass of beer, whatever it is, and makes it a very low-key social environment on video, which takes getting used to when it's not something you do on a regular basis.
Yeah.
But it does give you that personal connection again that you don't normally get on a day-to-day basis. And so there's things like that you can do that seem a little far-fetched sometimes that are really helpful.
I agree. I've had lunch with one of my coworkers where we just get on video together and we're eating and just chit-chatting about things. And it felt very awkward at first, but ended up being a really enjoyable experience for both of us.
Yeah.
So I recommend just taking some risks, getting out of your comfort zone a little bit.
I've done a wine chat with there were maybe half a dozen of us. The furthest was in Vancouver, I think. So, but half a dozen people. What kind of wine do you have? We're toasting. I mean, it can be fun. It is. I mean, it is fun. Yeah, it can be done. Okay. And it doesn't have to involve alcohol. It's just we happen to choose wine. But,
you can do a coffee. You can do a coffee date
right,
and have everyone on video drinking whatever their $17 coffee is.
Heather, what do you use for video?
So we use WebEx when we do our staff meetings. We've used Skype for business. We've tried Google Hangouts also. It depends on who's running the session and what technology they want to use. We haven't found the perfect one yet. We're still looking. I think that some of the challenges with video are the number of screens you can get on at one time and who you can see.
Right.
The quality has improved significantly over the last 5 years even, but at first when we were doing this, the line would drop or you couldn't hear someone or it was pixelated. I feel like I'm talking old school a little bit, but the technology has improved enough that it makes it seem a little bit more realistic and in person, and you can get the visuals, which was something that was a challenge. You couldn't get the facial expressions without the high definition and the faster response time.
All right, so I'm going to sort of wrap this up and bring it full circle. That kind of belief in the technology can help listeners overcome their reluctance that we talked about initially in mindset, because that's really where you got to start.
And I would also say the technology isn't the savior to this. It can definitely help it, but you need all of the other pieces too. I feel like you shouldn't use the technology to drive this, but there are some great technologies out there that can help with pieces of this.
I couldn't have said it better.
All right, wonderful. Thank you very much. Heather Martin is Chief Operating Officer at Interfaith Family, and Karen Graham, Executive Director at Idealware. Ladies, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great advice. This is Tony Martignetti, nonprofit radio coverage of 16 NTC, San Jose, California. Thank you so much for being with us.